The soft amber glow of Rosario's Italian restaurant cast long shadows across the white linen tablecloths. In the corner booth, a man in a simple black t-shirt and jeans sat alone, his beard slightly unkempt, dark sunglasses resting on the table beside a half-empty glass of water. Despite the restaurant's five-star reputation and clientele draped in designer labels, he seemed completely at ease in his casual attire, occasionally glancing up from his book to observe the other diners with gentle curiosity. At a nearby table, the restaurant's manager, Vincent DeLuca, whispered to the maître, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the underdressed patron. Does he really think he belongs here? This isn't some diner off the highway. The maître d' simply nodded, unwilling to engage, but clearly sharing Vincent's sentiment. Little did either of them know that what would unfold over the next hour would leave everyone in Rosario's completely speechless, a moment that would be recounted throughout the city for years to come. Before we continue with this extraordinary story, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming celebrity encounters coming tomorrow. A special night. The evening air carried the scent of rain as Harold and Martha Wilson made their way carefully up the steps of Rosario's Italian restaurant. Their pace was unhurried. Martha's arthritis had been acting up lately, and Harold, at 78, was mindful to match his steps to hers. They had spent nearly 6 decades at each other's side, and tonight marked their 57th wedding anniversary. "Are you sure about this place, Harold?" Martha whispered, her eyes widening at the crystal chandeliers and marble columns that adorned the entrance. "It looks awfully expensive." Harold patted her hand reassuringly, though his own heart raced with similar concerns. "It's our anniversary, my dear. 57 years deserves something special." What Harold didn't tell Martha was that he had been saving for months, putting aside small amounts from his pension. Even with careful planning, the prices on the menu they'd researched online had left him anxious. But Martha had always dreamed of dining at Rosario's, ever since they'd walked past it on their 50th anniversary and peeked through the windows at the elegant diners within. The maitre d' greeted them with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes as he assessed their modest attire. Harold wore his best suit, the same one he had worn to their granddaughter's wedding 3 years ago, and Martha had on a pale blue dress she had carefully ironed that morning. "Do you have a reservation?" the maitre d' asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. "Yes, sir," Harold replied, standing a little straighter. "Wilson, for 2, for 7 p.m. After a moment of scrolling through a tablet, the maitre d' nodded. "Ah, yes, follow me, please." He led them to a small table near the kitchen doors, despite the restaurant being only half full. Martha didn't seem to notice or mind, her eyes dancing with delight at the fine china and crystal glasses that awaited them. "It's beautiful, Harold," she whispered, squeezing his hand across the table. "Just beautiful." The man in the corner. From his corner booth, the bearded man in the black t-shirt observed the elderly couple with quiet interest. He noticed how the husband helped his wife with her chair, the tender way he touched her shoulder, and the matching gold bands that had clearly adorned their fingers for decades. There was something beautifully authentic about them, amid the carefully cultivated atmosphere of wealth and importance that permeated Rosario's. He watched as they studied their menus with growing concern, heads bent together in whispered conversation. The woman's hands trembled slightly as she turned the heavy menu page, and her husband leaned in closer, pointing to various options, likely discussing prices as much as preferences. Vincent DeLuca, the manager, approached the man's table with a tight smile. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir? Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in our bar area?" The suggestion was delivered politely but with clear intent. The dining room had a certain standard to maintain. The man looked up with kind eyes. "I'm quite comfortable here, thank you. The food is excellent." His voice was soft but carried a quiet confidence that made Vincent hesitate before nodding curtly and moving away. Dignity in struggle. Harold and Martha had finally ordered, the least expensive pasta dishes on the menu, and a single glass of house wine to share. Harold had calculated the total in his head at least 3 times, including a modest tip. It would be tight, but they could manage it. Remember our first anniversary, Martha? Harold asked, trying to distract both of them from the prices. That little diner on Maple Street? Martha's face brightened. You ordered the meatloaf special, and they brought you chicken pot pie by mistake. And you traded your meatloaf for my pie because you knew I was too polite to send it back. Harold finished, chuckling. 57 years, and you're still looking out for me. Their food arrived, portions smaller and more artfully arranged than they were accustomed to. Martha stared in wonder at the delicate presentation before carefully taking her first bite. Harold watched her face, finding more satisfaction in her joy than in his own meal. At a nearby table, a young couple dressed in designer clothes observed the Wilsons with barely concealed amusement. The woman leaned toward her companion and whispered something that made him snicker. Their laughter carried just far enough for Harold to catch, and his shoulders tensed slightly, the joy of the moment dimming. An unexpected turn. The man in the corner noticed this subtle interaction and the change in Harold's demeanor. He signaled to a server who approached his table immediately. Meanwhile, the Wilsons were finishing their modest meal when Martha's hand moved to her chest, her expression momentarily pained. "Martha? Are you all right?" Harold asked, alarm evident in his voice. "Just a little indigestion, dear," she assured him, though her face remained pale. "Perhaps we should ask for the check and head home." Harold nodded, concern replacing his earlier joy. He raised his hand to catch their server's attention, mentally preparing himself for the bill. When the server arrived, Harold straightened his shoulders, determined to maintain his dignity regardless of his financial constraints. "We'd like the check, please," he said quietly. The server, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled warmly. "Your bill has already been taken care of, sir." Harold blinked in confusion. "There must be some mistake. We haven't paid yet." "There's no mistake," she replied. "The gentleman in the corner has covered your meal, including gratuity. He also asked me to give you this." She handed Harold a folded note. With trembling fingers, he opened it and read aloud to Martha. "Love and time are the only things in this world that matter. Congratulations on 57 years of what truly counts. Happy anniversary, K.R." Harold and Martha turned toward the corner booth, but it was now empty, the mysterious benefactor having slipped away unnoticed. Recognition and revelation, Vincent, who had been watching the exchange from across the room, hurried over to the server. "Who was that man? The one who just left?" The server smiled. "You didn't recognize him? That was Keanu Reeves." Vincent's face drained of color. "Keanu Reeves? The actor?" And I suggested he might be more comfortable in the bar area. By now, the story was spreading through the restaurant like wildfire. The young couple who had mocked the Wilsons sat in uncomfortable silence, their expensive meal suddenly tasting bitter in their mouths. Martha turned to Harold, her eyes wide. "Keanu Reeves? From those action movies our grandson loves?" Harold nodded slowly, still processing what had happened. "I believe so, my dear." A waiter who had served the actor approached their table. "He was watching you both all evening, said you reminded him of True Grace. He also—" The waiter hesitated before continuing. "He also arranged for a car service to take you home whenever you're ready, and he left this." The waiter presented a small envelope. Inside was a gift certificate for Rosario's, enough for the Wilsons to return for their next anniversary, or perhaps several more. Ripples of kindness. As the story circulated through the restaurant, something remarkable began to happen. The atmosphere shifted from one of pretension to genuine warmth. Vincent DeLuca approached the Wilsons' table, his earlier arrogance replaced by sincere regret. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, I want to personally apologize for not seating you in our main dining area. Would you allow us to move you to our best table for dessert? On the house, of course." Harold looked at Martha, who nodded with a gentle smile. As they were escorted to a prime table by the window, other diners watched with newfound respect. The young couple who had mocked them earlier caught Harold's eye, and the woman approached hesitantly. "Sir, ma'am," she began, her voice subdued. I behaved poorly earlier. I wanted to apologize and ask, what's your secret to 57 years together?" Martha smiled at the young woman. "There's no secret, dear. Just promise to love each other a little more each day than the day before, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." The woman returned to her date, and their conversation took on a more earnest tone, their phones remaining untouched on the table as they truly engaged with one another, perhaps for the first time. The wider impact news of Keanu Reeves' quiet act of kindness spread beyond the walls of Rosario's. By the following morning, local news outlets had picked up the story. The Wilsons found themselves reluctant celebrities, their anniversary dinner becoming a symbol of true love and the power of unexpected kindness. Vincent DeLuca, deeply affected by the evening's events, implemented a new policy at Rosario's. Once a month, the restaurant would host Anniversary Night, where couples celebrating significant milestones would dine at reduced prices. The policy not only generated positive publicity, but also transformed the restaurant's culture from exclusive to inclusive. The young couple who had spoken with the Wilsons became regular visitors to the nursing home where Harold volunteered, bringing books and companionship to residents often forgotten by the outside world. They credited their conversation with Martha as the catalyst for their changed perspective. 6 months later, Harold and Martha Wilson returned to Rosario's for no special occasion other than enjoying life's simple pleasures. This time, they were greeted warmly and escorted to a prime table without hesitation. As they settled in, Martha noticed a new addition to the restaurant's wall, a framed quote attributed to KR that read, "The simple act of paying attention can take you out of your head and into the heart of belonging." "He's right, you know," Harold said, following her gaze to the quote. "All these years together, and the best moments weren't the grand gestures or expensive gifts. They were the quiet mornings sharing coffee, the walks in the park when the children were small, the way you still laugh at my terrible jokes." Martha reached across the table to take his hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And we're still making those moments, Harold, every single day." As they enjoyed their meal, several diners recognized them from the now famous story. One elderly gentleman approached their table and said simply, "Your story changed how my wife and I celebrate our anniversaries. Thank you for reminding us what matters." The letter. A week later, the Wilsons received an unexpected delivery, a handwritten letter with no return address. Harold opened it carefully, and together they read, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to thank you for the unintentional gift you gave me that evening at Rosario's. In a world often consumed by appearances and material worth, witnessing your authentic love and dignity reminded me why connections matter more than possessions. My mother raised me to recognize true wealth when I see it, and you two are among the richest people I've ever encountered. The way you looked at each other across that table, with 57 years of shared joy and sorrow, triumph and struggle, was a masterclass in what it means to truly live. I lost someone very dear to me many years ago, and sometimes I wonder what our life might have been like had we been given the gift of time that you two have shared. Your example reminds me to be present and grateful for every moment and every connection. Please accept my deepest thanks for the unwitting lesson you provided simply by being yourselves. With respect and admiration, Keanu Reeves." Martha wiped a tear from her cheek. "To think, Harold, that someone like him would find something to admire in our simple lives." Harold shook his head slowly. "Perhaps that's precisely why, my dear. In a world of complications, there's profound beauty in simplicity." Enduring legacy. The story of the Wilsons, anniversary dinner, and Keanu Reeves' act of kindness became something of an urban legend in their city. Local couples began celebrating significant anniversaries at Rosario's, hoping to capture some of the magic of that night. Vincent DeLuca, once focused solely on the restaurant's exclusive image, found greater satisfaction in the new atmosphere of warmth and authenticity. Reservations increased, not despite, but because of the shift in culture. People came not just for fine dining, but for the intangible sense of genuine connection that now permeated the establishment. For Harold and Martha, life continued much as before. They still lived in their modest home, still counted pennies from their fixed income, still found joy in small daily pleasures. But they carried with them the knowledge that their lifetime of love had created ripples they could never have imagined. On particularly difficult days, when Martha's arthritis flared or Harold's heart condition caused concern, they would reread the letter, drawing strength not just from the words, but from the reminder that genuine human connection transcends all boundaries: age, wealth, fame, and circumstance. On their 58th anniversary, Harold surprised Martha by taking her back to Rosario's, using part of the gift certificate Keanu had left them. As they entered, they were greeted not as customers, but as honored guests. The maître, the same one who had initially seated them by the kitchen, escorted them to the best table in the house. "We've been looking forward to your return, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," he said, with genuine warmth. "Happy anniversary." As they settled in, Martha gasped softly and gripped Harold's hand. There, in the same corner booth where he had sat a year before, was a familiar figure, casually dressed, bearded, radiating quiet kindness. Keanu Reeves looked up, caught their eye, and raised his glass in a silent toast. The Wilsons returned the gesture, no words necessary in that moment of mutual recognition and respect. Later, as the actor prepared to leave, he stopped briefly at their table. 58 years now," he said with a gentle smile. "That's something truly extraordinary." "We were just lucky enough to find each other young," Harold replied, "and wise enough to hold on through the storms." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "That's not luck, sir. That's courage." He looked between them. "May I ask you something? What's the most important lesson you've learned in all these years together?" Martha answered without hesitation. "That love isn't something you fall into once and ride out forever. It's a choice you make every morning when you wake up beside someone who knows all your flaws and loves you anyway." "And," Harold added, "that wealth has nothing to do with your bank account and everything to do with who sits across from you at the table." The actor absorbed their words silently, then thanked them with genuine gratitude before departing as quietly as he had arrived. That night, as Harold helped Martha with her coat, she whispered, "Do you think our story made a difference to him? A man who has everything?" Harold considered this as they stepped into the cool evening air. Perhaps having everything is precisely why he values the one thing money can't buy: authentic connection. Maybe seeing it reminds him it's still possible. The greater meaning: the Wilsons never sought publicity for their encounters with Keanu Reeves. When reporters occasionally called, they politely declined interviews, protecting the privacy of both their experience and the actor who had shown them such kindness. Yet their story continued to spread, evolving from a simple tale of celebrity generosity to something more profound, a reminder that human dignity transcends financial circumstances, that kindness costs nothing, yet changes everything, and that authentic connection remains our most valuable currency. Vincent DeLuca eventually expanded Anniversary Night at Rosario's to include a program where local couples could nominate elderly neighbors or family members with significant anniversaries for complimentary dinners. The Wilson Initiative, as it came to be known, transformed not just the restaurant, but Vincent himself. "I used to think success in this business was about exclusivity," he confided to a local reporter. "Now I understand it's about creating spaces where authentic moments can happen." That night changed everything about how I define success. Full circle. 2 years after their memorable anniversary dinner, Harold and Martha returned to Rosario's, not as guests, but as the guests of honor for the launch of the Wilson Initiative as an official foundation that would extend beyond the restaurant to support elderly couples facing financial hardship. Vincent had approached them months earlier, asking permission to use their name and story. Initially reluctant, they agreed when they understood the potential impact. "We've been the recipients of kindness our whole lives," Harold explained during the small ceremony. "From neighbors who helped when our children were young, from colleagues who supported us through tough times, and yes, from a famous actor who reminded us that genuine human connection crosses all boundaries. If our story helps extend that kindness to others, how could we refuse?" The foundation would provide anniversary dinners, home repairs, medical equipment, and other essentials to elderly couples struggling to maintain their dignity and independence. The first beneficiaries, a couple celebrating 62 years of marriage while facing mounting medical bills, sat at a table of honor alongside the Wilsons. As Martha surveyed the gathered crowd, she suddenly squeezed Harold's hand. There, standing quietly at the back of the room, was a familiar figure. He caught her eye, placed his hand over his heart in a gesture of respect, and slipped away before others noticed his presence. "He came," she whispered to Harold. Harold nodded, unsurprised. Some people understand the value of moments over monuments. I suspect he's one of them. The letter that changed everything. What no one knew, not even Martha, was that Harold had received a second letter from Keanu Reeves several months after the first. In it, the actor had shared something deeply personal. "Mr. Wilson, I hope you'll forgive this intrusion, but I felt compelled to share something with you. The night we met at Rosario's was the anniversary of a personal loss, someone I loved deeply who was taken too soon. Each year on that date, I find myself seeking meaning amid memories. Witnessing you and Mrs. Wilson, your evident love, your quiet dignity despite financial constraints, provided a moment of profound clarity. You embodied everything I try to honor about authentic human connection. The truth we rarely acknowledge is that fame and fortune are poor substitutes for the simple joy of growing old with someone who knows your heart. You have achieved what many with unlimited resources never find. Please know that while I may have covered your dinner that night, you provided something far more valuable to me, a glimpse of what real wealth looks like. With respect and gratitude, K.R." Harold had kept this letter private, sensing its deeply personal nature. But its message had lodged in his heart, reinforcing his belief that no act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted. Sometimes the person you think you're helping is actually the one helping you. Legacy of moments. As the years passed, the story of the Wilsons and Keanu Reeves became something of a modern parable, retold, embellished, but never losing its essential truth about human dignity, authentic connection, and the quiet power of kindness. Harold and Martha continued their modest life, finding joy in grandchildren's visits, community volunteering, and the simple pleasure of waking up beside each other day after day. The Wilson Initiative grew beyond anyone's expectations, eventually supporting elderly couples in 3 states. Keanu Reeves never publicly acknowledged the story, maintaining his legendary privacy. But Vincent DeLuca would occasionally find anonymous donations to the foundation, substantial sums with no name attached, just the initials K.R. 5 years after their first encounter at Rosario's, Harold passed away peacefully in his sleep, Martha's hand in his. Among his personal effects was a carefully preserved envelope containing both letters from Keanu Reeves. Martha read the second one for the first time, tears flowing freely as she recognized the profound connection her husband had formed with a stranger over the universal experiences of love and loss. At Harold's memorial service, among the flowers and cards was a simple arrangement of lilies with a card that read only, "Some connections transcend time, K.R." The final chapter. Martha lived another 3 years after Harold's passing. In her final days, surrounded by family, she shared the story and the letters with her granddaughter, Sarah. "The remarkable thing," Martha explained, her voice fragile but her eyes bright, "wasn't that a famous actor paid for our dinner. It was that 3 people from entirely different worlds recognized something valuable in each other. True connection doesn't care about bank accounts or fame. It simply responds to authenticity." After Martha's passing, Sarah found a sealed envelope among her grandmother's belongings addressed to K.R. Inside was a note Martha had written during her final days. "Dear Mr. Reeves, by the time you receive this, I will have joined my Harold. But I wanted to thank you, not just for your kindness that night at Rosario's, but for seeing us, truly seeing us, when others looked past. Harold kept your second letter private all these years, honoring what he sensed was its personal nature. When I finally read it after his passing, I understood why. Some connections are too meaningful for public consumption. I want you to know that you gave us far more than an anniversary dinner. You reminded us that our love story mattered, not just to us, but as a testament to what's possible when 2 people choose each other every day for a lifetime. If you ever doubt your impact on this world, please remember 2 elderly people who walked a little taller, knowing that someone like you found value in their simple love story. With gratitude across the distance, Martha Wilson." Sarah tracked down contact information for the actor's representatives and sent the letter, unsure if it would ever reach him. Epilogue. 6 months later, Sarah received a small package at her home. Inside was a handcrafted wooden box with a simple inscription, "For moments that matter." The accompanying note read, "Your grandparents' story continues to inspire my belief in the power of authentic connection. Their legacy lives on not just through the Wilson Initiative, but through all who choose love daily, who maintain dignity amid struggle, and who find wealth in relationships rather than possessions." I keep Harold's words with me. Wealth has nothing to do with your bank account and everything to do with who sits across from you at the table. With respect and gratitude, Keanu Reeves. Sarah placed the box on her mantel, a reminder of her grandparents' extraordinary, ordinary love and the unexpected ways our stories intersect with others. Inside the box, she kept both letters from Keanu to her grandparents and her grandmother's final letter to him, tangible reminders that the most powerful connections often begin with the simplest acts of kindness and recognition. In the years that followed, the Wilson Initiative expanded nationwide, its mission statement drawn from Harold's words, "True wealth is measured by connection, not currency." The foundation helped thousands of elderly couples maintain their dignity and celebrate their love despite financial hardships. And occasionally, at Rosario's, staff would notice a quiet man in simple clothes sitting in the corner booth, observing the elderly couples dining under the Wilson Initiative with gentle appreciation. He never stayed long, never sought attention, but always left behind both a generous tip and the unmistakable impression of a soul who understood that in a world of temporary things, love and kindness are the only true constants.